Today, we got something pretty special, to me at least. This is my brand new 2026 Mustang GT with the 6-speed manual. If you guys have followed the channel, you watched some of the other videos, you'll know I talked about getting this car a little bit, and I was pretty heavily considering it. And here it is. I went ahead and bought one. So in today's video, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick overview of what it has. It's pretty windy out, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay, but I wanted to take some time with the car before I filmed this video to get a feel for it and form some real impressions on it, instead of just doing it when it was brand new and saying, you know, this car is amazing because it's brand new. So I bought the car brand new, but we're currently at just over 700 miles, and I've had it for about 3 weeks now. So in this video, I'll give you guys an overview, and then we'll go ahead and go for a drive, and I'll talk about my driving impressions of the car and what some of my plans are with this car. So let's get straight into it. First things first, we have the vapor blue metallic color here, and I wanted to film this video during the day so I can try and showcase how paint looks in the sun. It is kind of overcast today. Not sure how well the camera will pick it up, but maybe I will insert a better picture. As you guys can see, we have this kind of grayish blue color with a really nice blue flake in the paint. Even at some angles, it looks like there's a little bit of purple possibly, which is awesome. I think this color looks absolutely amazing. And in my opinion, this is one of, if not the best color on the S650, so I'm really glad that I was able to get this one. Otherwise, you know, pretty standard on the outside. You have silver badges, not the Night Pony package, so silver badges instead of black. And I personally think that the silver badges, I would say, complement this color better. I think the black, you know, it doesn't look bad, but kind of mutes it a little bit, and the silver, at least outlining on this badge here, definitely stands out more, and I personally think looks better on this color specifically. So another good option there. On the rear here, we can see we have this low profile spoiler. You know, nothing crazy, but I think it looks good. Not too showy. I think it goes with the car well. And then we also have the standard black heat extractor on the hood, which is one of the things you can distinguish it as a GT by. Next up, we have the standard 18-inch black wheels here. And these tires are 255s, I believe. Let me verify that for you guys. Yes, these tires are 255/45 sidewall. 18-inch wheels, not sure of the width on them. And the tires are Continental Pro Contacts. Had these tires in some pretty heavy rain multiple times already. Zero issues at all. So they definitely check out there. Yeah, I think these wheels look pretty solid, honestly, for stock, you know. Offset is a little bit on the inner side, which I think if you add a spacer and some lowering springs, these wheels actually look pretty decent. If you guys know me, you know I had some pretty good fitment on my last car, and this car will be no exception. I actually already have wheels on order for this car that I should be putting on, along with well-ring springs and a bunch of other stuff we'll talk about later. I should be putting all that on by the end of the month, so look out for that. But I would say for stock, it doesn't look terrible. You know, definitely me going with a bigger rim, wider, and I did not cheap out on tires because I think the wheels on my last car honestly made one of the biggest differences in not only how the car looked, but also how it felt and drove. So I'd say tires are one of the most important mods that you can do. Next, we have the standard 4-piston front calipers. They are actually Brembos, which I was surprised to see have Brembo branding on them right there. And the same Mustang as well. These are not the optional 6-piston Brembos. It was definitely an option I would have liked to have, but you know, for the street, they're plenty sufficient. And I'll probably talk about some mods I plan to do in the braking regard a little later in the video. Otherwise, on the outside, not too much to talk about here. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I honestly think that the rear on the S650 looks better to me than the S550. I don't know, just something about the angled taillights. I think it looks pretty sick. And obviously, cannot forget to mention the optional active exhaust on the car, quad tip, valved, and I will say for a stock car, this is one of the loudest stock cars I have ever heard, and it sounds really awesome for stock. We'll obviously be touching some things in that regard, but for now, it sounds pretty dang good to me. And we do have different exhaust modes with the valves, which is pretty cool. Now getting into some practicality stuff here. This is what your trunk space is looking like with the rear seats up. And I will say, I was very pleasantly surprised by this. Obviously, the opening isn't that big, but I just moved recently and I was able to fit, I think, 3 or 4 very large duffel bags filled with my clothes back here, along with 2 desks that were disassembled. So I'll say the opening's not that big, but if you can fit it through the opening, you can fit a lot of stuff back there, which is very nice and convenient. Obviously, if you couldn't, still would have bought the car, but it is really nice to have that and be able to have some more versatility in terms of how you use this car. So now we'll take a quick look at the interior here. Nothing really too crazy, but you do have the cloth seats instead of leather. If you guys know the packages on the car, on this car that are offered, this is not a premium package, but it does have the 301A package. So it's basically a base model with the upgraded package that you can get, which does include electric adjustable bottoms on the driver only, not on the passenger, and not on the backs, which is kind of weird. Does also include ambient lighting. Can't really see it during the daytime, but it does look pretty cool during the nighttime. And you also get that in the footwells. There's a bunch of different colors that you can do, which is pretty awesome. What else? The package comes with the upgraded sound system, not the optional Bang & Olufsen one that you can get, but it is a 9-speaker system, and honestly it sounds really good to me. But we do, of course, have the ultimate sound system with the 5-liter Coyote and the active exhaust, so stereo not going to be used much. I will say on these cloth seats, they're actually really nice. They're really comfortable. And being out here in the South, especially right now in the summer, it gets brutally hot. So if you have black leather, it can get super hot. and these definitely do not get as hot, so that's really nice. Then you still obviously do have leather on the bolstering here. Nice little seatbelt holder, which is cool. And other than, you know, the cloth seats, I think the premium package comes with, it's one screen, but it's literally the same screens, and they just put a connector in the middle, so it's not even, you know, a bigger screen or anything. I honestly, again, this might be an unpopular opinion, I kind of think that the 2 screens looks a little better. I will say, you know, I wish that they integrated this into the dash, but what can you do? I will definitely say I was a pretty anti-S650 guy. I was pretty against getting the screens, but after living with the car and using it and all the features that it has and the updated electronics, I will say it is pretty awesome, and I actually do like it. So, do have wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, which works flawlessly, and I found myself using that all the time, which I never did before. Get a nice look at that paint again, and man, I just can't get over this color in the sun. It looks really, really nice. Otherwise, we have like faux carbon fiber trim along the door here, along the shifter column, on the steering wheel, along the dash there. It's a nice material, there's a nice weave to it. Looks pretty cool, I would say. And then we do have this leather flat bottom steering wheel, which I will say I really, really like actually. It's got a nice thickness to it. Feels really nice in your hands, paws. And it's got a little bit of give to it. It's not like super hard to where it just feels like a rod in your hand. And I'm just gonna put a pause to this whole segment because it sounds really weird, but steering wheel is really nice, feels really nice, and good quality leather all around. Nice soft touch here. The door, on the glove box, you do have rear seat space, no foot room, but you can put stuff back there. Like I said earlier, I've been moving just recently, and I was able to fit another 3 or 4 very big duffel bags back there, along with like my PC and other bags in the front seat. So I was very pleasantly surprised as to how much stuff I could actually fit in this car. And let's go ahead and take a look under the hood here and look at this beautiful 5-liter Coyote V8, which is the absolute reason that you buy this car. It did take me a second there. The hood latch is a little bit weird on this car. It's not like one that I'm used to, but regardless, this is exactly why you buy this car. One of the greatest V8s ever made, and 486 horsepower with the active exhaust. I believe around 418 foot-pound of torque with the active exhaust, I want to say. Somewhere in the low 400 area. And that is largely the horsepower increase from those 550s is pretty much completely due to the now dual throttle body setup with the dual intakes. And I will say this thing absolutely moves for a stock car, and the engine looks sick. Otherwise, not a whole lot to talk about on the outside. Let's go ahead and jump inside, quickly discuss some of the features on the inside, and we'll go for a drive. to fire it up because it is, as you guys can see, hopefully it is 91 degrees out right now and extremely humid, so I'm not trying to sit in here and be in a pile of sweat. But as you guys can hopefully hear, car is quite loud with the stock active exhaust, and I'm not exactly sure how the exhaust modes differ. We do have 4 modes, and that was not in the track mode. And as you can see, our screen has decided to go rogue. I've actually not had that happen yet. There we go. And that's one thing I'll talk about in a second in regards to things I don't like about the car. But here you can see we do have 4 exhaust modes. So you do have quiet mode, which is the valves fully closed, which is really nice if you want to start it in the mornings and not be stupidly loud. Obviously it's still going to be pretty loud, but especially, you know, once you have catless headers, which is something I plan to do on the car, having the valves really nice to be a little bit quieter and not upset people quite as much. We do have the standard exhaust mode, sport exhaust mode, and track exhaust mode. And I'm guessing that the standard and sport is valves closed under a certain RPM or amount of throttle, and then the valves open with a certain amount of throttle or RPM. And then track mode is valves fully open all the time. So it's really cool to have. Switches really easily. So I haven't actually had any issues with the screen once the car is turned on. I will say when you start the car, it does take a couple seconds to load everything up, which is kind of annoying because you do have your AC controls on the screen. Mainly going into this page, the My Mustang page here, which this is really the meat and potatoes of everything. So you have your track apps. You can turn on and off rev matching from here, which is a feature with the 6-speed manual. You have launch control and line lock, which locks the front brakes, so then you can do burnouts, warm up your tires, which is sick. You have an acceleration timer, a bunch of different ranges, which is pretty sick as well. You also have the same thing for braking. You have a lap timer. You have your adjustable launch control, so you can adjust the RPMs that the car launches at. And then you have a shift light indicator, which is also sick, and that's something I have not played around with yet, but I definitely do intend to, and I'll talk about a little bit why I haven't touched that in a second. You do have your auxiliary gauges here, and you can customize all of these to different things here, which is pretty sick. But on your main screen here, this is my favorite gauge, you have the gauge detail, which gives you all of your key temperatures and pressures right there. So honestly, this gauge is plenty enough. This shows you everything that you need to see, but this is cool to have. And you can also get the condensed mode. Very cool stuff. We do have a custom mode, which I'll show the drive modes in a second here. This does allow you to adjust your steering, your traction control, your exhaust mode, auto start stop, and then your gauge cluster. I haven't really used this mode. It does lock you into a certain base drive mode, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of it being a custom mode, because then you can't adjust so you can't have the steering be, you know, whatever, normal, but then traction control off and track exhaust. Obviously you can do all of that stuff individually, but it would be, you know, again, it kind of defeats the purpose of having a custom mode if you can't actually adjust everything the way you want it. So that's kind of weird. We have my color, so you can change the primary and secondary colors for the lettering here, your gauge clusters, your stuff here, which is really, really cool. You know, it's kind of gimmicky, but I think it's pretty cool, to be honest. So we change this to red. You can see this changes to red, tack changes to red, and then you can have a different secondary color here, which, as you can see, now this tack is, this part of the tachometer is red. Very cool stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in blue. Let's see. Actually, I kind of like the red. We'll go full red for today. Like that. Cool. So, the only thing here is kind of weird. You can't really just have like a white or like a standard color, which I guess I understand, but like, you know, maybe add a plain color. Same thing for the ambient lighting. You can adjust the brightness. You have this full spectrum of colors. Really sick. Again, it's in the door handles and the foot sills. Can't really see it during the day, but at night it does look really nice. And that's part of the package that I have. And then finally, you have the cluster theme here. So I do have it in track. So when you select this, it puts it in track no matter the drive mode. It shows the track gauges. But the standard here, you can have it match the drive mode. So now I'm in normal mode, and this is the normal gauge cluster. If I go ahead and go through the drive modes here, we go to sport, we have this really cool animation, which I really like. And you can see this is the standard sport gauge cluster. And then obviously with the sport mode, this puts the steering mode into sport, as well as the exhaust into sport. And then if we go down, we also have the track mode, which disables traction control, disables your collision assist, and this is the standard track tachometer or gauge cluster. We also have a drag strip mode, which is awesome, and that also uses the track gauge cluster. We have a slippery mode, which I have used, and it's very nice to have. And then we have our custom mode, as I talked about. So there is that. There's also this calm gauge cluster, which I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to lie. It looks kind of weird, but I'm sure, as you guys may have seen, one of the beauties of the screen is that you can get these really cool different gauge clusters. So we have a classic one here from a 67-68 Mustang. We have the Fox body gauges, which I would have to say are my favorite. And if you turn the lights on, possibly not. Well, I thought if you turn the lights on, the numbers and lines on the gauge cluster turn like a mint greenish blue for nighttime, which I believe is how the actual Fox body gauge clusters work. I know it does it at nighttime, but might just be time activated, I'm not sure. And then finally the SVT Cobra gauges, which also I believe turn a different color at night, which is awesome. So we have all of that. I'm going to leave it in track. This is my favorite gauge cluster, especially having your RPMs as a number right here is really nice to have. Otherwise, it's pretty much all that there is to talk about on this screen. We do have our Apple CarPlay going here, but you do not have to be on that screen. Features wise, there is some driver assistance features, so that's one thing. Down here you have your auto start stop, which I will say is kind of stupid to have in a manual, but I get for saving gas. Your My Mustang, so that was the page I just showed. If you click that button, traction control, you can hold this down, turn it fully off. Hazards, then this is your favorite button, so you can code this to be whatever you want. I have it for rev matching, so I just press this button. I can turn rev matching on and off, which is really nice to have a physical button for that instead of having to go through the screens for it, because I know some of the other cars are like that. But I've only been using it with auto rev matching on so far, because this is my first manual, and I've only been driving manual for a couple weeks, 750 miles, so not that I can't rev match at all, but it makes it a lot easier. and it is really good. The downshifts with the rev match sound awesome, so you guys will definitely hear that in a second. So we do have this auto hold feature, which basically will hold the brakes without you being on the brakes until you start going. It is kind of weird. I have used it on hills, which is where it's useful, but once you kind of know how to drive manual, you don't really need it, but it's a good assistance feature. We have lane keep assist, pre-collision assist, camera stuff, blind spot, cross trafficking, cross braking, driver alert, and then we also have the hill start assist, which is different than the auto braking. Basically, just when you're on a hill, it just holds you in place for a couple seconds till you get going, so you don't roll backwards. Which I will say, being down here in Florida, I never really saw any hills, and then as soon as I get this car, it feels like I'm at a stoplight on a hill every single day, which was pretty stressful to start out, but it's not so bad now that I've gotten the hang of driving manual. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is there. Otherwise, standard stuff here. You can cycle through this, adjust your music here. You have your fuel economy and your trip stuff. All just the standard stuff here. And then within settings, you can adjust a bunch of stuff. So you do have quiet start, so you can actually set certain times of the day, like if late at night or early in the morning, you'll do a quiet start so you don't piss off your neighbors too much. We have all that good stuff there, and you can actually adjust stuff on the instrument cluster that shows, which is really nice. And then on this main screen here, we do have that information again, which is really nice. But again, this gauge detail is just perfect. I absolutely love that feature. And then yeah, we have dual AC, climate controls. It is on the screen, which is kind of stupid, but works fine. It's not a deal breaker or anything. Do have heated seats in the front as part of the package. And yeah, not a whole lot else to talk about here. I think it's about time that we go ahead and get to driving this beautiful S650 Mustang with, of course, the manual transmission. So let's do it. Alright, so we are now on the GoPro. If you guys saw my last review, I did try to use my iPhone to film some POV driving. Didn't exactly work out in terms of the angle, so I'm back on the GoPro, which is way better. The only thing is that the GoPro does tend to overheat, so hopefully we can make it through this without it overheating. It is pretty hot out today, so just have to keep the AC on. Hopefully, we'll hope for the best there. But let's not even waste any time. I'm just gonna get straight into driving this thing. And as I mentioned, this is my first manual, and I'm only a couple weeks into driving it. So I'm not going to pretend like I am good at driving manual yet. You guys can make fun of my shifting. I will be granny shifting it, but you live and you learn. We'll eventually get there, and I'll be happy to look back on this video in 6 months or a year and laugh at how bad I was at driving it. So one thing on the assist that I will mention that is very nice is you do actually get, it will add a little bit of gas when you're getting going so that you don't stall out, which is super nice. Definitely very useful for getting started. Not that you can't stall it, because I already have, but it is a lot easier to get going. And then this car obviously has so much power that you don't really need the gas compared to some cars. And it will basically just get going very easily. And we do have a cop in front of us with his radar on. So we're gonna try to let him get ahead so that we can do some fun stuff, but let the car warm up a little bit more first. Right now we are in the standard drive mode with the standard exhaust mode, and as I mentioned on the outside POV, car's very loud for a stock car, I will say. Just pretty sick. Not what I expected. I did not expect it to be this loud at all, but it's awesome. And I'll say, for the purposes of this video, go ahead and throw it into sport mode with, of course, track exhaust. So definitely makes it louder when you open up the exhaust. Probably not the greatest thing to do right next to the cop, but we're not doing anything wrong. So in terms of the drive modes, the reason that I put it into sport mode is the drive modes do actually make a difference. They're not just, I mean, they are a little bit gimmicky, because the car is still the car, but with the different steering modes, steering definitely does tighten up with the sports steering. And I believe the suspension may adjust somehow a little bit electronically. I'm not entirely sure on that, so I'm not going to claim that outright. Let's listen to a downshift here. Man, so good. So good. But the biggest difference, at least that I noticed, was actually the throttle mapping. So in normal mode, you know, that's your baseline basically. In sport mode compared to normal mode, you have heightened throttle response just in general high up in the pedal. So that's going to give you kind of the most instant power in terms of a mode, from what I've heard people say in my experience. And then track mode is where it gets weird. I mean, it's not weird, it makes complete sense, but it's not what I expected in terms of what I thought it was going to be, and it's actually really cool. So when you put it in a track mode, it allows you to have more control over the throttle. So you can actually, you know, obviously when you're on the track, you want to be able to modulate the throttle more when you're coming out of corners, and not just have instant full power that's gonna send you into oversteer or whatnot. So it is actually less throttle response down low, and the car almost feels sluggish, but that's so you can obviously go harder on it coming out of turns and with more technical driving. And then as you get higher in the RPMs, the throttle response increases, which is really cool. I think that's really awesome, and that's just one piece of tech that this car has that's like, you know, I think the later S550s probably have that as well, I'm guessing. But yeah, I was a little confused by that, and then I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, you know, in a track mode it actually makes sense. And then I looked it up and saw people saying that, so it's pretty sweet. I'm trying to think of what else I want to talk about here in terms of the driving experience of this car. Now this is where things get interesting, I would say. And I mean that because of course we do have the MT82 manual. I think we're warm enough here to start to get on it a little bit more. We'll wait till we get on through it, because there's a lot of traffic for whatever reason right now. You know, there's a lot of mixed opinions about the way these cars drive. You know, Mustangs in general, of course, they're known not to handle whatsoever. We have a nice, oh wow, dang, that was definitely a supercharged S550, pretty sick. You know, there's a lot of mixed opinions about the way these cars drive and whatnot. I don't think there's any denying, you know, people say these cars are slow. I think you're kind of insane to say this car is slow, you know, maybe compared to like a supercar. But for the money, you know, 500 horsepower is a lot. Like, that is not a small number. And especially for me, coming from a 200 horsepower car, you know, that is a big jump. And it is absolutely plenty of power for me. You know, I'm sure I'll get used to it and whatnot, but for now, it's adequate. And we just got finessed on the light, but that's okay. I think the biggest thing that people talk about with this car is that they can't handle it all, especially with S550s. That's often talked about. From what everybody says, see, I have no reference in terms of the manual. I've only driven one other manual car, and it was an Accord. And in terms of, you know, these cars versus the S550s or other cars, I don't have a lot of reference. You know, I've driven other performance cars, but never a Mustang and never a manual performance car. But what I can say, you know, people say these cars handle definitely better than the S550s. I don't know how much more so. Can't attest to that. But I will say it feels pretty good. You know, it's a GT, you know, it's not a full-on, you know, track car or something. That's more like what the Dark Horse is. This is a GT, which means Grand Touring, and it drives like, you know, a GT should. It's a nice cruiser, it's comfortable, sporty, not super sporty, but, you know, obviously with the engine. You know, as I said, you have the different steering modes on here, and in sports steering, you know, it handles nicely. I think it's definitely stiffens up, and you're of course gonna have body roll and whatnot, but that's what I will be getting into next, is all the things I'm going to be doing in terms of modifications and adjustments to make this thing a whole lot better. And I will just kind of briefly say that I have quite a few parts on order for this car, and they are all pretty much suspension oriented. I do have an H-pipe for the exhaust, and like a shifter insert. But let's go ahead and listen to this exhaust under the bridge real quick here. Very nice, very nice. I am still getting the hang of, you know, I got it down pretty good in terms of just like regular driving, in terms of shifting hard. Definitely still needs some work. It's just my timing. I gotta come back on the throttle sooner and slip the clutch a little bit more, I think, than I am, maybe. Experienced manual drivers, if there's any watching this video, please chime in if you can tell what I need to fix to be able to shift faster. As you guys might be able to hear, let's see if we can get it to do it. The stock exhaust does pop. Let's go ahead and get a pull in here while we have some open space. Do third gear. Very nice. And as you guys can hear, we do have the cops out, so I'm not going to go too crazy here, but I'm also new to the area, so I don't really know where the cops like to hang out, but I figured we could at least get on the highway here and be able to use a little bit more of this car's speed. will say this car is just, this is plenty for the street to me. Like, you know, you can of course always have more, but more is not always better, you know. Like, I find myself wondering if I were to supercharge this, which is definitely a consideration. It's like, can you even use it comfortably on the street? Like, you're gonna get like 2 seconds of driving before you're going like 100 plus, and I really just think that you might end up getting less enjoyment out of it, because I'm making sure this cop is not going our way. I don't think so. You end up enjoying the car less, you know, because you have so much power. You know, at least we want to be somewhat responsible and sensible. You know, within reason. You know, we don't want to do anything too crazy. Of course, you can drive like an absolute lunatic and use more of the power, but something to be said about driving slow cars fast, and that's true for all cars. So we got a little bit of space behind us. We're just getting eaten up by cops here, and that is exactly why you need one of these, because they're just everywhere, dude. I think he's in the opposite lane, but prefer not to risk it. Might even have to get off the thruway here in order to do some more fun driving. I'll say I've driven this stretch of thruway a handful of times, and it's not usually this bad, so that is unfortunate. Looks like we're gonna slow down up ahead. That is even more unfortunate. I would say, man, the traffic in the state in general is so bad. I can't believe it. Just can't believe it. It's ridiculous. But as I was saying, this car's plenty for the street. Feels great. I'm trying to think of what else. You know, I try to keep this video as uniform as possible. Go ahead and take the exit here, so we can't find some more open roads, because it's just not it. I think we're actually going to stay on the thruway, because it's going to be our highest speed limit, where we are allowed to have the most amount of fun. Yeah, you might be able to hear that pop there. Bro. So we can get some revs in real quick right here. That's what I'm talking about. Let's get a second gear in here. Man, the cops are just crawling out here, dude. I don't think I've heard my radar go off this much since I came down here. But we do have a biker up there, so he'll take the fall for us. Yeah, man, this car, stock form, absolutely love it. As I said, I'm trying not to, man, they're just crawling everywhere. It's crazy. I think we need to find a better road in the future to do some shenanigans on. No way. Oh my gosh, bro. Well, guys, we are back. I realized I've been trying to check that the camera is actually filming every couple minutes, and it looks like the camera unfortunately overheated, which has been a very common problem I've dealt with this camera. Really sucks. Fortunately, we didn't lose the whole video. Only lost a couple minutes and maybe a decent pull, but trying to figure out a solution to keep this camera on while I'm filming longer videos. I was hoping that it would work out, but unfortunately it didn't. So right now my best idea is to just point the AC vents and run the AC higher at the camera and lower the resolution a little bit. Hopefully that works. I'm gonna try to be checking it more that it's actually recording, and I think that's my sign not to make this video too long. And then of course I was reviewing the footage, and somehow the angle is completely off again, which I swear I'm like cursed with having the angle off, because I checked the angle like 4 times before I started filming and it looked perfect, and then I get there and it's not, but it is what it is. So let's get a pull in here. Very nice, very good stuff there. Essentially, all that I was saying after the camera died was, as you guys can see, I'm not taking the car to redline. I'd like to know your guys' thoughts. What do you guys think about break-in periods? Because there is so many conflicting opinions on this topic, and the reason for the paranoia is that there's a good chance with my last car that the reason for the engine failure was because it wasn't broken in properly. And not by me, but I actually had the car delivered to me. So its first couple hundred miles from brand new were throughway driving, probably at the same RPMs the whole time, which is like the worst thing that you can do for a brand new car. So I tried to do as much research as I can and just make an informed decision about it. So I kind of tried to be somewhere in between, not just babying it all the time, and also not just flooring it to redline constantly. And I think that's going to yield the best results, to be honest. And I've been trying to get some decent engine braking in with it. You know, taking it up high in the RPM and then letting it come back down within gear. Because to my understanding, that helps the ring seat and everything seat properly within the engine. The first 100 to 200 miles, I tried to be more conscious about it and, you know, try to keep it below 5K, not go crazy on it, and then progressively as it gets more miles, especially after 500 miles, I've been progressively getting into it more, and I think that will turn out pretty good for me. You know, you can't overthink it, but it's still something that matters. And that leads me into my next point, which is, you may be asking yourself, why would you buy this car brand new instead of just getting the same car 1 or 2 years old for less money? And the honest answer is just, I just missed my exit. It was just a time and a place thing. I actually didn't plan on buying this. I took my previous car to the dealership that had this car to get appraised, because I was actually working on a deal for a similar spec one in 2025 that was out of state. So I was getting an appraisal for my trade-in, and they had this car there. I tested it, we worked the numbers, and it felt right, so I did it. paid about $47K for this, plus taxes and fees. So obviously not the greatest deal, but you know, especially with a car like this and the manual, it's nice to have the peace of mind that nobody was ragging on it before me and stuff like that, versus, you know, buying a used one. Even if it's lightly used, you never know how people treat their cars. So that is nice to have that peace of mind. And then I'm probably going to contradict myself here, because I do want to do modifications to this car, but it is nice for now to have the factory warranty as long as possible. I do plan on modifying things, but it is nice for now, you know. Not that I can't afford to fix the car out of pocket, but I would prefer not to, and it's really not the best use of my money to have to instantly repair the car out of pocket if, God forbid, something were to happen to it. So that's why, in terms of modifications, I am really holding off on touching things related to the transmission and the engine. Although I could do intakes and exhaust stuff like headers without avoiding the warranties. I know that when I do that stuff, I'm gonna end up tuning it, so that's why I'm holding off on it. And really, as I said earlier, this car already has such a nice engine in it. Let's hear it again here. Very nice. This car is already such a good powertrain. You know, MT82 is debatable. I'll get to that in a second. But I decided to go with mostly suspension handling mods, because I feel like that's kind of the weak link of these kind of cars, and that's going to really balance out the performance a lot more. You know, I've been going into a lot of tangents, but I think that the handling on this car is fine for what it is, but it can be made a lot better. And with the things that I have on order for the car that are going to be going on later this month, I think that it is going to push it to dark horse level handling, if not better. I'm probably going to make a whole separate video talking about the mods I'm going to be doing. I was going to do that in this video, but this video is getting pretty long already, so especially with my camera issues here, I'm like checking it every 5 seconds to make sure it's not overheating. But yeah, we have a pretty substantial amount of suspension related modifications on the way coming later this month, along with wheels. So super excited for that. I think it's really going to transform the car, and it's going to be awesome. So with that being said, other impressions, the MT82, as I said, you know, I don't have reference of driving manuals in the past, and I think that's to my benefit, because, you know, I've never driven a Tremec to be like, oh, this MT82 is way worse. And I don't think the general consensus is that it's horrible in comparison, but it's definitely not as good as the Tremec, obviously. So again, when I say dark horse level performance, I'm talking about suspension handling. Obviously the dark horse has Brembos, it has the Tremec manual, and it has better cooling systems. So those are really the big things. We will probably be getting into all of that eventually, so we're probably going to build our own dark horse equivalent or better, which is going to be really, really awesome. But that, I'm going to save that talk for another video, because I'll just go on forever. In terms of the MT82, I can see things that people are talking about. You know, again, I don't have reference. Throws feel decently long. Definitely going to go ahead and do a short shifter kit on it. Definitely feels notchy, which I actually like. I like feeling the mechanical feeling of it. you know, the common discussion with it is the lockout that people experience, the high RPM lockout, where basically, you know, you're going on a wide open throttle, you get to higher RPMs, and the transmission locks you out of the gear. And from what I understand, it's mostly related to the clutches that they use in these cars stock. I will say the engagement point on the clutch is very high, which I don't necessarily like, and the clutch and, you know, transmission feel is meh from, you know, obviously having no reference. I can see how it's not the best, not the smoothest, it's not the most crispy, but I would say it's not terrible. I haven't experienced any lockouts or anything like that. As I said, I haven't been going super hard on the car, I haven't been redlining it and stuff. And I think that's one thing I meant to mention on the break-in, was that, you know, I'm keeping it off redline until I hit 1,000 miles. Then I'm gonna do an oil change, and then we'll really get into driving it and, you know, beating on it and stuff. But MT82, this does have the MT82 D4, which was introduced with the 2018 Plus S550s, and to my understanding, this one also does, at least people say, it feels better than the S550s with this transmission. So I don't exactly know what else they tweaked, but people do say it does feel better to shift, so that's nice. But with the D4, they did update a lot of things which were related to the issues that people had with the original MT82s, or the ones that they use in older generation cars. So it does have upgraded synchros, has a different clutch system, a bunch of different stuff. But to my understanding, there is way less issues with this one. There's way less reports of lockout. I don't know what that guy's doing. That kind of stuff. And I think with some simple modifications, as I said, we're going to do a short shifter kit, probably eventually upgraded clutch, but at least different clutch spring and clutch lines. And I do have a weighted shift knob on order and a transmission insert, as I think I mentioned, for now. So I think with all that stuff, it's going to be, people say with that, you know, with the MGW kit and especially upgraded clutch, that pretty much solves all the lockout issues and it feels pretty good. So I think that's going to be the ticket. And honestly, you know, I'm not going to go ahead and swap in a Tremec or anything, at least not now. But I think it will be plenty for what we're going to do with it. And I'm also holding off on transmission stuff, not just for the warranty, but I think that being new to manual, I do want to get a feel for the stock transmission, the stock shifter, the stock clutch. So when I do go ahead and modify things, I can actually, you know, feel the differences and, you know, form an opinion on it, and also actually benefit from the differences, because obviously right now I'm still not the best at shifting and still learning the car. So I think it's good to actually learn on this car, which is, I mean, this transmission, which, or not this transmission, this setup, which is, you know, a little bit harder to drive well and fast and smooth, and get good with this and get a feel for this, and then, you know, feel the benefits of the upgraded setup a lot more. So that's kind of my thought process there. And yeah, man, I wish I could have, you know, gotten some more just core driving in the car. I know I've been talking for the entire video. I have tons to say. You know, the thing with this platform is there's just so much to do. I mean, this car is a blank canvas, and I absolutely love that. It's absolutely amazing for me, and that is absolutely terrible for my wallet. So there is that. But there's a handful of videos I can make about this, you know, talking about all the different things that can be done. But again, I'm gonna make that a separate video. I'm gonna go ahead and make a separate video with mostly just driving the car. Probably, you know, try to make 2 more videos while the car's in stock form. One just driving it, not really talking, and then another one driving it and discussing the, you know, full mods and setup that I plan to do on the car. So stay tuned for those videos. And with that, oh wow, that minivan just did something pretty reckless. Man, I hate driving down here, I'm not gonna lie. So much traffic, people don't know how to drive. It's so much fun. But I think with that, we'll go ahead and hopefully, if our camera doesn't overheat here, just get like a minute more of driving in maybe, and try to get at least one more pull in for you guys, so you guys can see how this car feels and drives in stock form. Again, I am new to this area, and a lot of the speed limits here are 35, which sucks. But did want to get some real driving in for you guys, and I'll definitely be finding better spots to film at and test the car out a little bit more hopefully here. But let me just shut up for a second. So as you guys can see, I'm not very smooth on the fast shifting yet, but we're working on it. We're working on it. As I said, I don't know if the camera overheated when I said this, but I think I mainly just got to honestly come back on the throttle a little bit sooner, and I think that's really gonna make the, you know, at least the sound, the gear change is a lot smoother and quicker. So that's what I'm working on right now, but we'll get there eventually, you know. No need to rush, just trying to enjoy the car, and really happy with how this car feels in stock form. It's really, really good stuff coming from the Acura, I will say. So let's see what we can do here. Let's listen to those downshifts again. Yeah, handling wise, turning feels nice. You know, it's a little bit boaty, but